Hello and welcome to the podcast. Every moment is sacred, where we interweave meditation and healing into everyday life. I am your host, Rain Elizabeth Stickney. Now, let us begin. Hey. I'm so happy to introduce you to Rachel Strivelli. She is the author of Talk to the Trees. She is also a profound and playful channel, psychic, healer. She is a guide and an intuitive business coach. She is certified in manifesting. Rachel helps creatives, coaches, and therapists go from confused to confidently taking a highly desired big leap. I imagine you will really enjoy this conversation because we get a sweet look at a very spiritual childhood that Rachel enjoyed and the decisions she made about her own spirituality and how they evolved over time into her adulthood. Rachel is a former environmental educator and naturalist. She wants you to connect to the power that lies within your true nature, within your inner wisdom. Get ready to remember with wonder and awe all that is available for you in the field of your very own precious possibilities. You can find Rachel on social media at Rachel Strivelli, Strivelli, Rachel Strivelli. And you can also find out more about her on her website, rachelstrivelli.com. I'm really looking forward to speaking with Rachel on Instagram. I love doing Instagram lives. For those of you who follow me there, I can be found on Instagram at pictures_of_presence, at pictures of presence. And I like to do an Instagram live around once a week or so. And soon Rachel will be a guest in that way. It's so fun and engaging. So please follow me there and come to the live. I also want you to know that my year-long meditation program is beginning today, but you have not missed out. I welcome you to join me for 40 weeks of meditation in 2024. And you can do that by emailing me. I will send you all the details. Meditation at rainelizabeth.org. If you use the code podcast, you'll get 30% off on the year. And you can also look in the show notes for the direct link to the store. You can go to my website, rainelizabeth.org/stillwater-meditation, rainelizabeth.org/stillwater-meditation, and you can purchase from the site. So just use the code podcast. I want you to get the best deal available to you. I'm so excited to be starting this Thursday, which is today, but you can join in next week or soon after. Everybody who is registered gets the replays. So nothing is lost and everything is gained. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being a listener and part of the audience for this show. Every moment is sacred. With great honor, pleasure, and delight, here is Rachel Strivelli. Rachel Strivelli. I'm so happy to have you here. Hey.
I'm happy to be here, Rain.
Oh, thank you for meeting with me. And I'm so excited to talk about spirituality and creativity and trees and nature and all sorts of wonderful things.
I'm so excited too. And I want to say, this is just coming to me, so I'm going to go with it. This is what I do in work. If something comes to me, I know I just have to speak it. And so I want to share that when I was younger, I was always into spirituality. And at a certain point, I started feeling like the odd one out at school and in settings because I was a new age spiritual person and everyone around me was Southern Baptist or Methodist or something else, Christian based. And so I have been reclaiming my love of it and my feeling of being public about who I am. And even as you were saying, we're going to talk about spirituality, there was a part inside of me that felt, oh, can we do this? And another part of me that's like, we can do this. So I just want to share with the listeners, even though I'm out of the spiritual closet as a psychic, I have had my own journey of being public and vocal about spirituality and also feeling at times like I couldn't be. And that just came up this moment too.
Yes. And Rachel, we are doing this. We are
Yeah.
talking about spirituality. It's happening.
We're doing it.
I am so curious about you as a spiritual child. What was that like?
What was it like? I am glad and happy that my family was supportive of my whimsy, my interests. And so my parents were into spiritual things too. So there were always books around the house that I could read on practically whatever topic you might want to read on related to spirituality. Although I will say, I don't think we had any books that were from like Judaism or Islam, but there were definitely Buddhist books and books about auras and crystals and things of that nature, and books about healing, and maybe a book about a spirit guide, and books about just connecting to your star self and star seeds and that type of thing. And I played a lot outside. So nature has always been this really strong connection for me. And I believed in fairies, and I didn't see fairies, although I remember one of my best friends would always say, you could see them out of the corners of your eyes.
Mhm.
And then it was like once she planted that seed within me, I didn't see fairies, but I started seeing spirits after that. And
Ooh.
I grew up on a piece of land that used to be a children's camp 100 years before or 50 years before. I can't remember exactly how long before we had lived there. And I had two younger sisters, but I would be out and about playing. And out of the corner of my eye, I would see kids and I would
Mm.
start talking to them, thinking they were my younger sisters. And I would turn around or turn my head to see them fully in my vision, straight on, not just peripheral. And there was no one there. And I
Whoa.
still get chills. Although now there's a part of me that's like, wait, Rachel, you should clarify. And maybe this is part of me dismantling the fear around it. It's not that there was no one there. There was no one who was a human who was there who I could
Mhm.
see straight on.
Mhm.
But there was some spirit there who was hanging out with me, and I was just chit chatting with them about whatever I was playing with: sticks, moss, mushrooms, rocks.
Mhm.
And that, even though it was kind of exciting, it also, that whole there was no one there freaked me out at some level. And so a few years after that, I shut off my gifts and I stopped
Oh.
seeing spirits out of the corners of my eyes. And I pretty much, it was like it all stopped for years. And I would also felt like at that time my cats could kind of communicate with me in my mind. And most of it was simple: open the door, fill up my food bowl.
Sure.
But one of our cats, she was hit by a car because we lived kind of near a major road. And I would see her after she had passed on. She would still be hanging around our house. She'd
Mhm.
hang on the porch railing. She would be at the door. I would literally go to open the door because I'd seen her out of the corner of my eye. And then she had gone. That didn't bother me. That just made me feel, oh, she was here. And I went to
Mhm.
go open the door to let her in, even though it was a spirit. She could just go through the door. But that was our routine, you know?
Mhm.
So what I think and maybe this will be helpful for somebody listening too, which is maybe why I'm called to share it. Even though I shut down my gifts, essentially, I also felt that I had read enough story tales. I should leave a window of opportunity open. So I said, I'm not giving these away forever. I just want to shut them down till I can handle it, till I feel like I'm an adult who has the capabilities for this. And I still was very intuitive and I still had a very rich dream life. I feel like everything that had been in the waking world also then just fully went to the dream world once
Mm.
once I made that decision.
Mm-hmm. That makes so much sense. I see all of this beautiful information coming to you, and then you made a boundary, which I am curious
Mhm.
about how you did that. But I gather that the information continued to come, but in a different way, in a way that
Yes.
you were more open to, perhaps, in that moment.
Yes, exactly. And there were various times in my life. So after I turned off the gift, I forgot about it for years. And then I think I would remember it periodically and then think, oh, yeah. And then a few years ago, I remembered it and I thought, wait a minute. Hey, this might come in handy. I should really do bring that back. And it took a bit of a process to figure out how to bring it back. And I try to always be really compassionate with myself because I don't know if it's just me or most people. It's very easy to go to shame and blame and judgment and, oh my gosh, why did you give this away? Or how could you shut this down or whatever? And I decided I'm going to be compassionate. So whenever I'm changing, I try to return to compassion if I can.
Mm-hmm.
And I really started thinking, I didn't want to judge my younger self who couldn't handle this in the way that it was occurring. And I thought, I like now that for me, I feel like there are fairly strong boundaries because what I didn't like was a feeling of any point in my day, I could be going about doing something and then be bombarded by
Mm-hmm.
some spirit coming in who wanted to communicate something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just had this strong knowing of, oh, it's okay to set a boundary. And the night that I prayed for my gift to go away till I was older, it was like I turned a switch. It was that quickly everything
Wow.
changed. Yeah. And I think it's partly that I had the conviction of it. And I'm good, I guess, at setting boundaries, setting a strong boundary.
Mm-hmm.
I thought a few years ago when I brought it back, oh, maybe it's like turning a light switch on again. You just turn it on again. And that part of it did not work out that way for me. I prayed and put out an intention. Okay, I'm ready for it to come back now. And then it's as if you could hear like wind rushing sagebrush down the quiet and dusty road. I'm like, okay, so what's that? Like, isn't this going to just come back in a flash or come back in a moment? And
Mm-hmm.
I still don't have that psychic sight visually as I did as a child. And sometimes I think, well, I don't really know if it matters, or maybe it'll come back eventually. But I like knowing that there can be a boundary. And when I've worked with clients sometimes who also have intuitive or psychic gifts, or even if you don't consider, everyone has some level of intuition, but
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to have a boundary. It's okay. This happens with me with my creativity. I used to get so many book ideas and so many article ideas, and it almost felt overwhelming. Like the ideas were piling up and I couldn't, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have the time to do things with them. And so for that, I put out the intention and I visualized the dial turning down.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to stop this flow. I don't need 10 new ideas a day. One or two new ideas is plenty. And I think a lot of us don't even know, oh, you mean you can ask to change things? You can ask to modify? And what I find is, yes, because this is a relationship and every one of us, we're unique physiologically, energetically, in all of those ways. And so you can tweak it to work better for you.
Mm-hmm. That is such an important skill. And it's a skill that I didn't learn until I was in my 20s, in my mid to late 20s. And I too had psychic ability as a child. I did not turn it down. I was very open to it. But as a young adult, I needed to learn some of these boundaries that you're talking about. And it's true, there's a relational realm, not just between human beings, but between everything. And when we tap into how to use the dial that you describe, or I created a zipper for myself to zip myself up when needed, all sorts of imagery can be really helpful in creating those boundaries. But I love that you, as a child, knew what to do for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely think I always go back to fairy tales. There's something about fairy tales. I read a lot as a child, and I still love fairy tales, even though I don't read them as much now. I felt like I had read enough that I knew it's almost like fairy tales taught me the rules of life. Or how to work in the world and with magic or with mystery. It's like you don't ever, if somebody comes to your house as a guest, you don't treat them terribly because that's going to get you later.
Mm-hmm.
And other things like that. Okay, that didn't really happen to me as a kid. Random strangers wandering up to our house, although we let pets wander up sometimes. But I feel like fairy tales have all of this embedded wisdom. And I just feel like I read enough that I thought, oh, okay, this is the way the world works, which also makes me laugh because I'm thinking, wow, fairy tales were my instruction manual for life. But hey, there could be worse instruction manuals out there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You're reminding me that one of my previous guests, Donna Fields, actually studied fairy tales as her
Ooh.
PhD dissertation. And she talks a bit about what that means to her in her episode. So it's a great
Mm.
episode to listen to for anyone interested in fairy tales and the wisdom that they hold. And the title of her episode is really great. It fits in here because it's something that she would say: the witch is the heroine.
Ooh,
And when we
I love
think
that.
about that, when we think about the dark characters of fairy tales and how they're messengers from beyond and how they have a healing story for themselves, it
Mhm.
switches around some of those classic stories that many of us know so well. And it stretches the mind a bit to help us wonder about things more openly, which I think is very useful in the realm of intuition and psychic
Mhm.
ability.
Yes. And what you just said, I feel that that's how I work with people. I stretch their mind or stretch their awareness to help them open up to new ways of seeing things or new ways of working with your intuitive ability. And I never thought about the witch as a heroine, and I love that because, as you say, it changes the story. And for those of us who feel witch-like, now we have a place in the story, not as the bad character who is the villain,
Mm-hmm.
but who has our own experience. I want to share it. The other night I was reflecting before I went to sleep, and typically before I go to sleep I do a process of, it's a whole mix of prayer, meditation, watching where my thoughts go, working with my subconscious to focus on things that I am wanting to bring into my life. And yes, of course, there's some of the normal, like this happened during the day and I didn't do that. And I had this conversation with so and so, and I wish it wouldn't have turned out that way. There's, a lot of us do that ruminating at night. But I was pondering and reflecting a decision I'm trying to make for my business. And all of a sudden, when I was thinking about the trees and tapping in, I thought, oh, I need to embody this picture of the witch to help me get my answer and to
Mm.
feel into it. And so then I got this visual of me at the witch as the witch and me opening my cottage door open wide
Mm.
and speaking out into the wind, into the air, and then the feeling of the wind bringing the magic.
Oh, I love this imagery and I relate to it and I feel it. And you're reminding me of my son, actually. And I'd love to talk a bit about trees. Now, I purposely allow my son to find his way in the spiritual and psychic and even religious realm. I don't know what his life has in store for him. He's 9, so it's just unfolding. But he is a spiritual person, and I recognize that in him. And sometimes he comes to me with really interesting reports, like, one day last year, we were sledding and I saw him go over to this beautiful tree. And I thought, oh, that's so nice. He's with the tree. And that's really all I thought. It was just a nice moment. But later in the day, he came back to me and he said, Mommy, I can hear the tree talk to me and I can talk to the tree. And then I felt so warm inside and so excited for him because I get to witness his discovery of communing with nature in his own way. And I know that
Wow.
trees are very important to you too.
Hmm.
Who are trees for you?
That's a great question. I sometimes say that they're my life coach, they're my mentor, they ground me, and they're my friends that I go to when in some ways I've had enough of humans. And especially if there's something bothering me, either about my family or the world or whatever other humans that I'm interacting with, or if I'm really sad. And not to say that humans can't comfort me, because they do, but there are moments where if I'm in my most struggling moments, then I want to go sit with the tree, look at a tree. And a lot of what I feel for them doesn't feel like it's words. And I can say talk, but it doesn't, talk just means communicate. And
Mhm.
it feels more like I just am around them to be around a living being that is not struggling in the same way that I am in that moment. And I can just immerse in
Mhm.
what to me feels like that constancy and consistency of this is a cycle of life. You're living life. Every day is a day. And that stick to itiveness that they have. So that's kind of the main way that I interact with them most of the time. And
Mhm.
then occasionally I and it depends. I don't know if I can say how frequently this is. I will have an answer or a question and I want an answer to it. And I will go ask the trees. And I typically either on a walk or go sit out on my back porch. And sometimes I have my journal nearby to write things down. And sometimes I'm just sitting and then I'll meditate and just be receptive. And what do you want to tell me?
Mhm.
I probably should do this more because there's some question every time I remember, oh, wait, I don't have to struggle over all of these questions. I could just go ask for help.
Yeah.
Uh, the trees are just right there. And so in those moments, it feels like words or information just drops in my head. So it's not like this experience of like hugging someone where you feel the embrace and you just feel loved and held and seen. That's kind of our normal day-to-day relationship, me and the trees. But
Mhm.
I'll ask a question and then receive an answer. The idea for the book came from the trees. It didn't come from me, really. I knew I wanted to write a book. I wanted to have a published book for quite a while. And at the end of last year, I said to myself, this is going to be the year. It's going to happen. I'm committing to this year. And yet I had three book topics and titles that I was playing around with. They were all different. And I couldn't decide. And it had been, I felt like weeks where I'd just been in the indecision and trying to find a decision, and my dreams wouldn't tell me. And all of my other tools wouldn't tell me. And I wasn't getting any outside confirmation of like, this is better than that. So one day I thought, oh, why am I struggling over this? I'm just going to go ask the trees. So I go out to my back porch with my journal and I meditate. And I said, give me guidance about which one of these three books to write. And right away, I start getting the guidance. It's none of these three books, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And literally, it doesn't always happen this way, but sometimes the way guidance comes through for me, I have pen and paper because it's literally, I'm dictating like I'm a note taker
Mhm.
for the wise one telling me what's up. And they said, it's going to be talk to the trees. This is what it's about. This is how long it's going to be. This is what you're supposed to price it at. And
Oh,
all of this,
wow.
like I got very specific instructions.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I had been picturing what I considered was a typical book length of 50,000 words as the minimum. and maybe somewhere closer to somewhere between 50,000 and 120 or 30,000, which is anywhere from, I don't know, like an 80-page book to a 150-page book.
Mm-hmm.
And the trees told me 10,000 words max was what I was allowed to do. And
Oh.
yeah, and I was so puzzled and also frustrated because I had to get over, I think it was some ego and also this preconceived notion of a real book or a valid, important book has to be longer than that. Who's going to take it seriously if it's shorter than that? And even though I know that doesn't have to be true, that was a thing inside of me that I wanted to have a longer book, I guess, to somehow prove my writing ability. I don't even know. But because I trusted this direction, I decided to follow the directions and work with myself. And I worked with a coach too, off and on, to essentially get over this hump of it has to be a certain way and all my ideas of how I wanted to be. And I channeled the words of the trees. And I really felt like, okay, if this is their book in some ways, and yes, it's mine too, but I'm taking their guidance and letting myself relax and go with the flow and do what I'm supposed to do with this. And once the book was out into the world, what I realized was actually most people told me the short book was preferable. And it's short chapters too. They're 1 to 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy for somebody to pick it up and in less than 5 minutes get this moment of connection with nature, connection with the trees, and then go about your day. Go back to your meeting if you're in a meeting, or start your day if you're reading it at the beginning of the day, or reading it as a way to end cap and have your evening wrapping up. And because people are busy, the short book is more accessible. And it's funny because there's some books that I highly regard by authors who are a little bit similar to me in terms of either our intention or connection to nature. And so they're braiding sweetgrass.
Oh, yes.
And then there's women who wolves. And I feel connection to both of those. And I haven't read either one of them all the way through, even though I enjoy them and I'm a reader, but they're thicker books. And I don't shy away from thick books, but I think thick books of that type of content, for me, I'd rather come in and read a chapter or two and then take a break and process it. And so this book, I feel, is an even easier way for people to just come in, get a connection, and go back to their day, but not go back as if, oh, now just go about your day and forget about it. It's like bring that connection with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. And Braiding Sweetgrass is one of my favorite books. And just a quick tip for anyone interested in that book, if you've read it already, maybe you already know, but it is also an audiobook. And I use Audible, but there's lots of different audio platforms. And the magical thing about listening to Braiding Sweetgrass is that Robin Wall Kimmerer, she reads her own words and she has the most beautiful voice. And I know some of my listeners are very sensitive to people's voices, and I am too. I really love to listen to voices that I love to listen to. And so to hear her read those pages and passages and chapters is one of the most magical experiences and very informative. And like you're saying, the information lends itself to being integrated into one's life.
You know, it's so funny. I sometimes forget about audiobooks. I think I need to find a way to integrate it in my life to speak about that, because I think now I know I want to get a copy of it on Audible, even though I have a hard copy of it. And I'm thinking, or whatever audio player I'll find it on. But I'm also thinking, I don't know if I want to pair it with, a weekly hike and then I listen to it, or if I want to have it going while I'm doing something else routine, filling up the dishwasher. It might be nice to, I guess I can experiment with what it'll pair the best with.
Yes. And to experiment with your book, I wonder if you could read a passage for us.
Ooh, I would love to. I'm smiling to myself too, because the last time I read a passage, I was reading to a group, and it was so funny because I let them pick, or I can't remember if I let them pick a number or if I opened it up right to the number chapter that they had picked. So do you want to help me pick the chapter?
Is there a chapter 9?
Oh yes, there is. Ooh.
Okay.
I'm gonna skim for a second. Oh, this is a super short chapter too. Every chapter has, so it starts with the place where I have channeled the trees, and then what I recognized when I let my first few readers read it before I published it, I worked with some friends who I valued their opinion, and they and I figured out we would end each chapter with my vision, with my human brain, of how do we apply this or practice some of the things that maybe are more esoteric, or they might not all be esoteric, but a real world applicable way to take whatever the chapter talked about and incorporate it into your daily life. So I may not read all of the practice part because it ends with the practice, but I will read all of the part channeled from the trees. And is there anything, I don't want to start reading before, is there anything else you want me to say or that you are curious about before I read chapter 9?
I'm so excited to listen. I have not read your book yet. And so this is an introduction for me as well as anyone else who's curious.
Yay! Oh, so exciting. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read it. Chapter 9, Flowers and Celebration. Next time you see a tree in bloom, see it as an invitation. You're invited to a wedding. You're invited to a celebration. You are invited to a moment of beauty, love, and even pleasure. Scientists will say that the blooms and petals are meant to attract pollinators, and they're not wrong. This may not be your wedding ceremony, but you're still invited to the celebration. Is the pollination as thrilling as human acts of pleasure? We'll leave that up to your imagination. Each blossom, each petal drifting on the wind is letting you enter into the lightness, the joy, and the hope that love evokes in your heart. Whether or not you feel human love at this time, you're invited to engage and experience the freedom and exhilaration of floating with us. Pause and gaze at the tree. Touch a petal if you wish. Wait for the wind to cast petals to the ground if you can. Watch how the light shines on petal after petal, on branch after branch. Notice if you smell a perfume faintly in the air. Notice how your body feels inside in this moment. Feel your emotions. So that's the part from the trees. And now here's your practice. This whole chapter provides questions for your practice. To take your practice further, reflect upon whether you have a favorite blooming tree. Can you remember the last time you smelled a blossoming tree? Have you ever touched the petals of a tree's flower? Make a point to keep your awareness open for tree blossoms. Your goal this year is to engage with those blossoms as you see them. If you're in a fast-moving vehicle when you see a blooming tree, give a quiet thank you in your mind or on your lips. If you're walking and see a tree in bloom, approach it slowly. Notice if there are pollinators about. Notice if you can smell the flowers. Explore the petals. Let the lightness, joy, and beauty of the tree flowers be something that you cultivate and experience with your being. Can you close your eyes and feel the joy of a tree in bloom within your heart?
There is an apple tree in my heart in full bloom.
I love apple trees. Those are so good.
Yeah.
It makes me also think that if somebody listening is thinking, I don't know if I've ever smelled an apple tree or touched these blossoms, it could be a good invitation to make a trip centered on or including when trees are going to be in bloom. Like if you live in the desert, I don't know when your trees bloom, but visit Vermont or visit somewhere else where the trees are blooming. I know Washington, D.C. has cherry blossoms that bloom, and
Mm,
in the Pacific Northwest, or go to Japan and visit
hmm.
their cherry blossom festival.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. How marvelous. In the beginning of your passage, I was also taken to my summer garden where there are all sorts of flowers, not necessarily trees, but just how every bloom, every blossom is a celebration, just like you write. It's a welcoming of joy. It's a welcoming of sharing light in a spectrum of color. It's so magical every time to be with flowers, to really be with them.
Hmm. Yes. Oh, yeah, I agree so much. I definitely have an affinity for the trees, and I love all plants.
Mhm.
And I wonder, sometimes I think the trees are such an important figure that most people have some kind of connection to a tree. Like I garden also, like you, but not everybody gardens. And yet I feel most of us could have a connection or a story about a tree. And even if the trees are like the leaders who say, okay, we're going to get people more excited about trees. And then maybe they'll start noticing the other plants around them too.
Yes, there is an intelligence in the natural world. And if we listen, we can be guided. If someone was guided to you and wanted to explore the work that you do professionally, what would they find? What would they experience with you?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question. I am going to answer in a way that I've never answered before. But it's a way that I'm experimenting with because this is what feels true to my heart is it feels like you're coming to a small feast, and it's created in a way not to overwhelm you, of course, but whatever point in your day that you're coming, if you're just a little bit hungry and you just want a little nibble, there are some delightful small things that you can nibble on. Amuse bouche, if you will, which I think is French for like use the mouth or lips. And then you can delve even deeper if you think, oh, okay, I'm actually quite hungry and I want to see where we go. And so with your senses, you can get into a richer, deeper experience. And in non-food terms, that looks like I have some courses that people can engage with. I work with people one-on-one, and I periodically will do workshops online, some free, some paid, and events like that. And I love the food analogy because even though as an actual hostess, I'm not necessarily always super excited to make all the food myself. I love feasting with people and enjoying the pleasures of a good meal.
Mm.
And I think a good meal is good for the eyes and the body and the soul. And I guess that's also a similarity of working with me professionally is I have the intention and I also see the effects that it's good in more than one way. So some people who come to me, for example, they might want to develop their spiritual gifts more. And if I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'm also tuning into what's happening in their body. And if there is some moment from the past that needs to be seen and healed and spoken to, we work with that. So then the body feels better and the soul feels better and the mind also something to chew on. And so I really like to work with all of those elements because similar to how trees are, I think work that's very grounded is really important. And yes, I'm very spiritual and love all of the cool stuff. And I kind of like the out there stuff, but I also feel like I also want to stay grounded here on earth because that's
Mhm.
where we're living right now. And there's so much magic and beauty and joy and abundance and colors and experiences to be had here. So
Mm-hmm.
staying grounded, and a lot of my experiences that people can do with me will also encourage either creativity or some other way of engaging with the world in a real tangible sensory way to complement everything else that we're doing together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did that make sense? I know it was a bit of a, as I said, I've never talked about this beast before, but it seems that that's the direction that I'm moving in to describe what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I feel as though I am a rich broth being steeped and stewed and reduced into a very nutritious form and extracting all the vitamins and nutrients of the pieces of the broth. And your ingredients, your perspective feels so loving to me. And adding in these elements of spirituality and creativity, the natural world, being grounded as well as expansive speaks very clearly to me. And I hope that it's reaching our audience as well. I mean, I imagine a wealth of compassion and the kind of instruction that allows for boundaries as well as opening up for individuals who are on a self-growth path.
Yes. Thank you. And I'm so delighted to know that you're a nutritious, rich broth. That sounds amazing.
Want some?
Oh, that was good. And it makes me also think of broth. And I don't know, I know Reiki has this idea, but other philosophies and modalities do too, of like you take what you have and it goes where it needs to go. And that's how I feel about a broth. You can add things to it and take it in different directions depending on what you need that day.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
How can people find you, Rachel?
Yes. So I have a website, and that's rachelstrivelli.com. And I'm also on many of the social media platforms. So Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook. I'm not necessarily active every day on all of those, but I do have a presence there, a profile there, and will check messages. But if you want to follow me on any of those, connect with me on any of those, Instagram and TikTok are the ones that I'm on daily, unless I'm taking a break, which I may at some point take a 7-day break just to have a refresher. For the most part, I am there connecting with people every day.
Wonderful. And where can people find your book?
Yes, so it's for sale on Amazon. And because of the way I guess it works now with Amazon and third-party sellers, I have found it's on the Barnes and Noble website, even though I didn't put it there, but I'm not complaining. It doesn't mean you could go into a physical bookstore and buy it there, but maybe one day. So, and if there is an independent bookstore near you, and they do online ordering, you could see if they do it. If you are not fond of shopping through Amazon, and the other option, if you want just a Kindle version, sometimes people will contact me and they just buy it directly from me.
So they could contact you through your website or through social media.
Yes.
And what is the name of your book again?
So, and I don't think I mentioned the subtitle. So it's called Talk to the Trees, Wake Up to Wisdom, Wonder, and Calm.
Lovely. I feel a sense of calm as you say your full title.
Yeah, I love that. The trees helped me pick out the full title for the book.
Such wisdom. As we wrap up for today, Rachel, is there anything more that you would like to touch on that we have not spoken about, or that you want to shed a little bit more light on?
Yeah, I'm going to pause for a moment and think, because we've covered so much and I love it already. And well, two things. One, I love how you shared about working with your son and letting him explore and evolve. And I'm doing a similar thing. I have two children, a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm similar, letting them evolve and explore. And also, both as I do that with them and noticing the gentleness that I let them find their way and guide them in the ways that I feel drawn, it also then has the feeling for me of receiving that gentleness and exploration back. And I am bringing it up because I think about one of the things that I love about children is their playfulness and their way of seeing things in a new way that either as adults we've forgotten how to see or never knew. And so I wanted to bring that up because I find that that was one of the things that I think both in the spiritual teachers who I like the most and in ways of interacting with the world, it's like we can keep that sense of play and fun and delight in it, and it doesn't all have to be serious. And not that we're being serious in a bad way here. I just wanted to bring that up because I find that it's a lot of fun to find the silliness in the moments too. And also, clients will often find if we're working together, some of the time, either the way their guides are speaking to me or my interpretation of it comes out humorously because life is, there's a lot of humor in there if you can have enough space to see it. And I have this little frog on my desk that I don't know if you do a YouTube version of this. So the podcasters won't be able to see the frog. It's
Well,
one of
they might
oh,
one day. It's a goal. It's a goal of mine.
oh good. The frog, every now and again, when I want to kind of mix up what I'm doing in business or in my spiritual practice, I'll talk about it with my kids and see what they come up with. And so we came up with this idea together of manifesting frog, which I'm still working to see, is manifesting frog just a household thing that we talk about, or does the world know about manifesting frog too? So now all of you know about manifesting frog. And I don't really know all where it's going to go, but that's part of the exploration of it. And I think it's my way of making sure that even my spiritual practice doesn't get like heavy and a feeling of like, oh, now this is another like job to do and another task. And it makes me laugh, which lets there be room for more creativity.
For sure. For sure. And this gives me an idea of how to play with you in asking one of my favorite questions. And I'm going to ask it in a brand new way.
Ooh, good.
What is manifesting frog thankful for? Or, well, grateful for? Thankful, grateful, sisters of the same spirit. What is manifesting
Yes.
frog grateful for?
Hmm. Okay, manifesting frog. Well, the first thing, I think it's a he's telling me is people, and I want to see if there's anything more I get about that. I just get this sense of hopping around and us high-fiving with frogs. And I think it's really nice because you and I are both nature lovers. I'm sure some of the listeners are. And sometimes people can get really down on ourselves as a species. Oh my gosh, humans are doing this, humans are doing that. It's so terrible. And it's surprising to me that the frog is grateful for us, but it also is reminding me it doesn't mean that nature is hating us. Nature doesn't hate us. And nature isn't like, oh my gosh, look at what you're doing to me. And so I think we can let that gratitude be in ourselves too, of we can be grateful for each other.
Yeah. Oh, I
Thanks
love
for
this.
asking it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for revealing what manifesting frog is grateful for and how wonderful there can be an interspecies gratitude that we can all be grateful for each other.
Yeah, that's really fun.
There's one last thing I wanted to follow up on. I heard you say earlier, you mentioned this phrase that really caught my ear, the star seed. We were talking about you as a
Mm.
spiritual child, and you mentioned the star seed. And I just wonder about that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pause and talk slowly because sometimes I like to check, am I speaking from memories of my mind or information that I want to tune into and tap into from beyond my mind? So I guess I could do both. So the way I understand this star seed is, and the way some people talk about it, is it's this idea of that we all are, we have pieces of the stars within us. Now, I think there are, the way some people look at it, as there are some of us who are like, we're from the stars, from other planets or solar systems or galaxies, and we're here. To me, that doesn't feel as affirming as thinking we're all beings that have stardust within us and pieces of stars within our bodies. And I'm just slowing down for a second to see what else there is that I want to say about that. Oh, that's cute. I don't know if this would be the stereotypical way that people look at the word, but what I'm getting is this visual of, and the phrase, a star is born. And what if each of us imagine that there's a star seed within us that's ready to grow and become this beautiful star flower plant that is the human, and yet it's growing in its own way of, some stars are big and some stars are smaller and some are yellow and some are red, and then there's nebulous, which I know isn't a star, but there are all these possibilities is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Your star can look like. And so if you could let yourself hold this idea of this star within you, that's the seed that's growing and blooming, and whatever way it feels like it wants to grow within you, because it feels that people can interpret it in their own way. And believing that when you were born, a star is born, and maybe you're a celebrity star one day, or maybe you're just a star living your quintessential, unique, beautiful life in your town where you live. Like, it doesn't, a star doesn't have to be seen by millions to be living its full starry brightness.
Mm-hmm. That's right. A star gets to be a star.
So a listener might go look up what other people say about star seeds, and I have no idea if it's what if I gave what the original version or definition of it is, but that's what I'm told is a really loving and kind way to think about it and to use it to feel that your own growth is beautiful and divine and starlit.
Indeed. I am so grateful for how the wisdom of life moves through you, Rachel. I love all that you are sharing today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Rain. This was so special. And thank you for your gentleness. Before we started recording, I was talking about Rain's loving eyes that just made me feel so comfortable. And I think that's also why I felt so courageous sharing things that I never have shared in that way before.
I feel so honored. And I love your eyes too. We're connected in these sparkly eyes. We get to be here together and share this moment, and then share this moment with so many other people too.
Festing Frog is happy we're all here.
Thank you so much for listening. It has been a great joy to have your presence here in this podcast. I welcome you to celebrate the joy and wisdom in your life exactly as it is. And I welcome you to feel loved, fully loved, exactly as you are. www.rainelizabeth.org.